Uh, as always, people run to Twitter to say the dumbest things they can think of. And basically, this is broken down along two lines. Line number one is the political, and line number two is the spiritual. So they're sort of intertwined on the left, but there's a slight difference. So on the political side, there are a bunch of folks on the left, like Alyssa Milano, who just put out stuff that is not true about guns. So here's what Alyssa Milano wrote. And again, she's now seen as some sort of political figure, which is amazing. I'm not sure why being on Charmed makes you an expert on guns, but apparently, I have much to learn about witchcraft and also ignorance about firearms. Alyssa Milano writes, "There are no background checks on long guns, AR-15s in Texas. Thanks for the info, Shannon and Watts. This is untrue. This is a lie. There are background checks on long guns in Texas. In fact, this guy went in, he actually got a background check, and then he received a gun anyway, even though he was already federally barred from owning a gun. So yes, there are background checks. As I have said, there are universal background checks across the United States when you buy from a federally licensed firearms dealer. Every federally licensed firearms dealer, every FFL in the United States, must perform background checks on you before giving you a gun. Okay, the only ones that are not policed this way are so-called hand-to-hand transactions. I want to sell a gun to Mathis, and so I can sell a gun to Mathis without going through a federal background check, because then I would have to go to a store and I'd have to run a background check, and it would put the onus on me. And in reality, it's impossible to police, except, on the way back, basically. If Mathis were to go and shoot somebody, that wasn't me, presumably, and then they would backtrace where the gun came from, then they could prosecute me. But prospectively speaking, there's no real way to prevent people from selling each other firearms in private. Federally licensed firearms dealer, a bigger issue because they can be audited at any time by the federal government. So this is just not true from Alyssa Milano. This is also idiocy from Chelsea Handler. Chelsea Handler, again, another one of these political experts who knows everything there is to know about politics, including the fact that Dana Rohrabacher is actually a woman. She tweets, quote, "Innocent people go to church on Sunday to honor their God, and while doing so get shot and killed. What country? America. Why? Republicans." Well, no. It turns out that the shooter in this particular case is actually a militant atheist. And if you go to his Facebook page, it is covered with militant atheist slogans. He's apparently on the left, on the political left. He went to a church and murdered all of these people. Apparently, he'd been speaking negatively about religious people for a long time. So you have an atheist who goes and shoots up a church, and the first instinct is to blame Republicans, which makes no sense at all. The idea here, of course, if it were up to Democrats, then they would ban guns all the way. Now, I would suffice it to say that if it were up to the left, there wouldn't be as many people going to church on Sunday to honor their God, period. But that's a story I'm going to get into in just a second. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution provides a right to keep and bear arms. The founders knew that it was important that human beings be able to keep arms in order to resist tyranny from governments, foreign and domestic. This is why you were actually mandated in certain states in the United States, in the early colonies, to own a gun in your home. Mandated. Because in order to be a member of the militia, you had to own a gun. It was your job to obtain a gun. This is not uncommon in Switzerland. They basically have similar laws, essentially. But the idea that it's Republicans' fault when a bad guy goes and shoots up a church is really sick. I've never said it's Democrats' fault when a guy goes and shoots up a congressional baseball game. In fact, I defended Bernie Sanders when that happened. This is pretty pathetic from Chelsea Handler. But unfortunately, it's a widespread sentiment, and it's not just held by Chelsea Handler. Joy Reid, who makes a living being wrong about everything, she blocked me on Twitter, so I had to see this through somebody else's account. She says, "Enough with the thoughts and prayers already." Paul Ryan had tweeted out, "Reports out of Texas are devastating. The people of Sutherland Spring need our prayers right now." Now, whenever a Republican says prayers, because Republicans actually take prayer seriously, folks on the left lose their minds. How dare they say prayers? They could act right now to stop all this. What, are you just going to pray? You just want to sit around and pray? That's your thing, to pray? Okay, so this demonstrates a full-fledged failure to understand what prayer is for on a couple of levels. But Joy Reid tweets out, "Enough with the thoughts and prayers already. The Bible teaches us that faith without works is dead. Do something or say nothing." So first, a bit of irony. These people were shot in the middle of prayers. They were shot and they were murdered in the middle of their prayers. And here you are saying that no one should pray for them. I'm pretty sure that the people who would be most certain to want other people to pray for them would be people in a church who are shot. I'm fairly certain that's the case. You didn't hear this sort of stuff after the massacre in Charleston, South Carolina, the massacre at the Black Church. You didn't hear a lot of this, don't say thoughts and prayers, stop saying thoughts and prayers. You didn't hear it as much because it was Barack Obama in power, and Barack Obama was saying things like, we should express our thoughts and prayers, right? And then he went down there and he sang Amazing Grace. Imagine if Trump went down to Sutherland Springs and sang Amazing Grace. The left would go ballistic. Obama did, but because Obama was pushing their favorite policy positions, that meant that his prayers were genuine, you see. Because according to the left, you're a bad person if you disagree with them, and so your prayers are worthless. We can't disagree on politics and both pray. Our prayers are worthless unless we agree with you on the politics of the situation. So she's not the only one saying this. Keith Olbermann is saying this too. He says, Speaker Ryan, bluntly, shove your prayers up your ass and do something with your life besides platitudes and power grabs. Okay, so number one, if you're going to tell people not to do something, and then what you probably shouldn't do is say do something with your life besides platitudes and power grabs in a tweet that is purely platitudinous and is clearly also a power grab. I mean, Keith Olbermann would like to grab a certain amount of power from the American people by seizing guns. This idea that prayers, if I pray for you, that's something terrible is just ridiculous. So prayers serve a number of purposes. I've talked about this more in the Bible segment than I have in the main of the show. But as a religious person who prays 3 times daily, thrice daily, and then I say prayers before and after my meals, I say blessings before the meals and after my meals. You know, we say a lot of blessings in Judaism, so we're constantly blessing God. We're constantly praying in Judaism. It's a thing. There are a few reasons for prayer. One of the reasons for prayer is to seal yourself. Seal yourself. It's for you less than it is for God. God doesn't need you, and he doesn't need your prayers. But you need your prayers. Why? To steel you for doing things. So the idea that prayer is only about prayer, that you pray and then you go about your daily business, that's not right. One of religion's sort of basic premises is that it is your job as a human being when you see bad things happening in the world to recommit yourself to being a better person. That's what prayer helps you to do. It helps you to confess what you've done wrong. It helps you to realize what you could do better. It helps you realize that you were created by a creator who cares about you and cares about other people. And are you doing honor to his creation? And it helps you go out and do better things with your own life. Second, there is a belief in Judaism and Christianity that God hears your prayers and acts because of them. Not, as I've said, because God is reactive to you, not because God needs your prayers, but because you have changed as a human being, and we can change as a country if we pray together. We are more unified, and God responds to that, right? That's sort of the idea in Jewish and Christian communities. It's true in Muslim communities, I assume, as well, that if you pray to God, then you are signifying your subservience to God, and God responds favorably to that. So we actually believe that prayers do something. They're not just spewing empty words. And there is a great irony to all of these people spewing empty words on Twitter and saying, how dare you talk to God? Like, there you are talking to your imaginary sky being, but here I am on Twitter tweeting to no one. But I'm doing something because I tweeted. I promise you, my prayer did more than your tweet. My prayer did more than Keith Olbermann's tweet here, especially because what he's actually doing is driving the country apart. If you want to create a consensus based on anything here, you can't insult everybody who prays in the United States. It's like 80% of Americans pray at some point. So that's silliness. It's not just him. The sort of scorn that a lot of people on the left feel for religion is pretty palpable. Again, recognize the irony here. An atheist shoots up a church, and the first thing that people are saying on the left is stop praying. That seems like bad politics. Very, very bright. Stephen King did the same thing. He basically said, it's time to stop praying, and he dropped the G. It's time to stop praying and start legislating and get rid of the other G as well. A couple of things. One, again, it was illegal for this man to hold guns from all that we know. Okay, so more legislation would not have stopped that. And two, if you really want to show the scorn that you have for the American people by dropping G's in praying and legislating, look at those hicks with their praying, with their Jesus and their Bible. Those were the hicks that were shot, right? I mean, those were the quote-unquote hicks that were shot. They were people who lived in Texas. In all likelihood, the parents of these children voted for President Trump because Texas went heavily for President Trump. It was a very small town. These are people going on a Sunday morning to pray. It's horrific. It's horrific. And for people to sit around ripping, they're like, would you hear this ever if God forbid, a mosque had been shot up? Would you ever hear this? A mosque gets shot up, would you hear people saying, all these people should stop praying to Allah. They should stop praying to God for Muslims who were shot. Of course you wouldn't hear that. It's just scorn for Christians that really drives a lot of this, and that's really kind of gross.